Well, hello everyone. Welcome back again to another section on finance. Today we're going to be talking about installment loans, which is really just going further into what we talked about in our last video when we were looking at installment loans and we were talking about how you have principal and you use the formula and you have a set payment amount that you're paying every month to your loan company to then be able to pay off your loan. So just a little bit about loan basics. We have already touched upon this, but just as a reminder, the principal is always the amount of money you owe at any particular time. And why I say over a period of time is because if you look at, for example, let's say you financed a car for $15,000. The principal of that loan at the very beginning is $15,000. But then after 2 years of making payments, that's no longer going to be your principal anymore because you've been paying that principal amount down every single month. So your principal would be different. It would be less. And so that's why we say it's whatever you owe over a particular time, because as I said, every single month, your principal will decrease by a certain amount, and you can check to see what that is at any point. To pay off a loan, you have to gradually pay down that principal. And so the loan term is going to be the time you have to pay back that loan in full. Just to cover again, this is the payment formula that we looked at in a previous video. This is basically the formula that you would use to find out what would be your payment given the loan amount, your interest rate, how often it's compounded. Typically, it's going to be monthly with a loan, and then how long, which is your T, you will be making payments on that loan. The goal is that at the end of the term of the loan, your loan would be paid off. Okay, just quick little review. So now we're going to jump into a couple of examples today. And in this first example, I know I'm going to need room for this one, so I'm going to put that down already. In example 1, you need a $6,000 loan to buy a used car. Your bank offers a 3-year loan at 8%, a 4-year loan at 9%, and a 5-year loan at 10%. Calculate your monthly payments and total interest over the loan term with each option. Which options would you choose and why? Now, this is going to be typical. If you are shopping for a car, you will be given different loan options. Interest rates typically will be lower the shorter the loan term, which is why here you would see the 3-year loan is actually at a lower rate than, say, the 5-year loan. However, again, as we talked about before, everybody's financial situation is different. So what's going to work for you might not work for somebody else. And that's why it's good to shop, know your options, but then also consider, given your financial situation, which loan option is actually going to be the best for you. All right, doing this option. Now, we're going to actually look at 3 options here. So I'm going to start off with option 1, and let's look at the 3-year loan. And I'm just going to write this kind of short, at 8% interest. And we're not going to use the formula, but we're going to use our technology. We're going to go to that website we went to in a previous video, which was calculator.net. I already have it pulled up and ready to go. So again, that's calculator.net. I love this website. And under financial calculators, we'll just go to loan calculator. And we're going to enter the loan information. It says you're going to be buying a car for $6,000, or that's what the loan will be for. So we're going to assume maybe you put a down payment, or maybe you traded in a car. The loan term is for 3 years, and it's at 8% interest. And I'm going to keep it at monthly because we are going to be making, it says in the problem that you're going to be making monthly payments. All right, so we've got our information here for the 3-year loan. Click calculate. And your payment, you can see right here, is at $188.02. All right, so let's go back to our notes. And let me just write down our payment we just said was $188 Now, I'm also going to do two other calculations with these problems. Because notice it says calculate your monthly payment and total interest over the loan term. So first we have to calculate what is our total amount in payments. So you're going to be making 12 payments a year for 3 years, and each of those payments is $188.02. In other words, you're going to make 36 payments in total, and that's how much your payments are. And so what we have here is $6,768.72. That is the total payments. How much you're going to pay in interest then, remember, interest is always the total amount that you're paying back minus what you borrowed, and that was the $6,000. So your total interest payment, or the total interest you're making, is right here, $768.72. Now let's look at the next loan. That is the 4-year loan, and that is at 9% interest. So now we want to see what is that payment. So we're going to go back to calculator.net. The loan amount is not changing. You're borrowing $6,000. We just have to look at the different options depending on how many years. So now this is 4 years at 9% interest. Click calculate. And here you have your payment, $149.31. Okay, $149.31. So your total payments, and I know the website gives it to you, but I prefer let's just do the math for good practice here. Now you're making 12 payments, but 4 years of 12 payments. That's 48 payments. And then for $149.31. So what we get here for our total payments is going to be $7,166.88, which means our interest is going to be that total that we just found minus the original loan amount. And now you have $1,166.68. One more. And then we have our full comparison. Number 3. And actually, just to make it more colorful, because I already used the blue, I'm going to switch to the green. Just I think it'll stand out more so when we do our comparison. All right, the next one was a 5-year loan at 10% interest. Okay, so we're going to look at what the payment will be for that particular loan and interest. $6,000. We're looking at 5 years and at 10% interest. So I'm just changing the years and the interest rate. Calculate. Notice we have here $127, so $127.48. Now, let's calculate the total payments. We have to do some math here, right? Some algebra here. All right, total payments, again, 12, but 5 times, right? 5 years, that's 60 payments. And then times your monthly payment. So multiply that all together. And now your total payments are $7,648.80. Which means your interest is going to be the amount we just found minus the loan amount. And that's going to give us $1,648.80. And I forgot to underline over here. All right. we're looking at three things here. Going back to the 3-year loan, your payments are $188. Compared to the 4-year and the 5-year loan, it is the higher payment. However, you're done in 3 years and you're only paying back $768.72 in interest. Let's jump down to the 5-year loan. Your payment is the lowest of the 3 loans, but yes, you're going to be paying more than double back in interest. Now, does that mean that you absolutely should only choose a 3-year loan? No, because like I said, everybody has a different financial situation. Yes, we would all love to pick the 3-year loan, but it might not work for us and we have no choice but to choose the 5-year loan. Or maybe we can do the 4-year loan, which is somewhere in between the two. But again, this is something you always want to look at. Look at your choices, but then look at what not just your options are, but what financially is going to work best for you so that you're not stretched too thin, right? And that's why I always say, yes, I'm sure everybody would love the shorter term loan, but it's not always going to work for us. And it's good to just understand what your options are. But I also think it's important to understand what you're paying back too. Okay, so that was a comparison looking at a car loan. Again, these are all installment loans. And now we're going to go down to this one, and I'm going to just put this onto my next page. So here, our next problem. You have a choice between a 30-year fixed rate loan at 4% and an ARM. Remember, we talked about that in our previous video, adjustable rate mortgage with a first-year rate of 3%. Now, neglecting compounding and changes in principal, estimate your monthly savings with the ARM during the first year of a $100,000 loan. Suppose that the ARM rate rises to 5% by the 3rd year. How will your payments be affected? And that's the one thing I talked about in the previous video is when we have a fixed rate loan, your interest rate is fixed. So in this particular problem, for those 30 years of payments, you'll be at a fixed rate of 4%. But with the adjustable rate mortgage, a lot of times you will start off at a lower percent, but depending on how the interest rates are fluctuating, they could also then increase over time. So let's talk about this. All right, because mortgage payments mostly go to interest in the early years of a loan, and this is just how it works. These installment loans, if you look at an amortization schedule, you will see that. So when you have a car loan, a mortgage, student loans, any of that, if you looked at the breakdown of your first few payments, you're going to notice that the majority of your payments are going to go to interest. It's just how it works. So that's what's going to happen. And then over time, your payments will make more towards the principal and less towards interest. So given that, we can make approximations by assuming that the principal remains unchanged, relatively unchanged in that first year. So for the 4% fixed rate loan, the interest on the $100,000 loan for the first year, so let me kind of write down what I'm saying a little bit here. I'm going to do some calculations here. So the interest on the $100,000 fixed rate loan, okay, so we're, can't spell today, fixed rate loan during the first year, because this is at 4%, right? So at 4%, that means we're going to take 0.04 times the 100,000. And what that's going to give us is $4,000. All right, so that's what we're saying in the first year is relatively going to be approximately the interest for that first year. Now, and let me switch here. with the 3% adjustable rate mortgage, the interest then is going to be 3% of the 100,000. So 0.03 times 100,000, and so we know that's just going to be $3,000. Now let's look at that. So in the first year, okay, but they're asking us, suppose it rises. Oh yeah, how will your payments be affected? Now, we're actually not done with this first part. So let me just kind of finish this first part with with the fixed payment, you're going to be having $4,000 in interest. With the ARM, the adjustable rate mortgage, you're going to be paying $3,000. So in this first year, actually, let me put this in the beginning. With the adjustable rate, you're actually going to be saving $1,000, okay, in interest. That's what you're going to be saving. What does that mean about your monthly payment? Okay, so I'm going to take this further because it's talking about how will your payments be affected. So that means I'm going to be saving $1,000 during the first year with the adjustable rate mortgage in a year. Well, we're making 12 payments in a year. So what am I actually saving for each individual payment? Roughly, and we're just going to round to the nearest whole dollar, roughly $83. And I'll just put this here, per month. Okay, that's the first part. That's during the first year. So if you chose the adjustable rate mortgage, you save about $83 a month. But let's take this further. With the third year, okay, by the third year, let me just write down a little bit of what I'm saying. I have a lot to say. I'm not going to write it all down, but you can pause the video. By the third year, okay, let's just summarize what it was saying. The adjustable rate mortgage reaches 5% interest now, right? So now think about this. In the beginning, in the first year, you had a 4% versus 3%, 1% difference. So here, by the third year, the adjustable rate mortgage is 5%, but your fixed rate is still at 4% because it's fixed. So you still have a difference of 1% interest, but the situation is reversed. Okay, so let me just kind of say, you still have a difference of 1% interest. Oh, almost ran out of room there. But the situation is reversed, meaning now you are saving with the fixed rate because it's at 4%, whereas the adjustment rate mortgage went up. Yes, it went up 2%, but think about it. It's still a 1% difference looking at the fixed rate, but now reversed, where the fixed rate is a 1% lower, whereas before the adjustable rate was 1% lower. So this is what we're saying. If you stick to the ARM, so the adjustable rate mortgage, let me just switch colors here to kind of emphasize this. Instead of saving, because in the previous problem, you were saving $83 a month. But now it's 1% more than the fixed rate. So you're not saving $83 per month. You're going to be paying, so instead of saving, let me see what I wrote down. Instead of saving $83 a month, you are paying $83 more per month. And think about that. That's because the situation just got reversed. So you're not saving 83, you're actually paying 83 more because it's 1% more a month. Okay? Moreover, If interest rates remained high on that adjustable rate mortgage, you will actually continue to make these high payments for many more years to come. So what I'm trying to get at here is, while adjustable rate mortgages do reduce risk for the lender, they do add risk for the borrower. So I always say, please do your research when you're looking at a comparison of an adjustable rate mortgage and a fixed rate. Are there times where an adjustable rate mortgage might be better? Sure. But you have to do your research and even consult with a financial advisor before you make any decisions like that. But just wanted to go over a problem like this because it does show you how in the beginning, yes, you did save, but then when the rate went up, you ended up increasing your payment as compared to what you would have paid with the fixed. Okay, well, believe it or not, that was not too long of a section, but that ends our section on installment loans.